Let's stand for the pledge. And while we're standing, let's take a moment of silence for the victims of 9/11. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll read our district's mission statement. Grounded by our history as one of the oldest publicly supported schools in Wisconsin, Mineral Point School District is the heart of the small that educates and inspires our students for a bright future in a big world. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. September regular meeting. Roll call.
Bergstrom? Here. Bush?
Here.
Dunn?
Here.
Harris?
Here.
Eisner? Here. Johnston? Here. Gelding?
Here. Okay. No recognitions today. We'll go to approval of the minutes. We've got the August regular meeting. We've got the special meeting on August 30th where we did some hires for the after-school daycare and a new PE teacher to replace Mr. Ingwell. We had policy and finance committee meetings, which we'll hear about later in the meeting. And then basically second reading of our board priorities. Is that right, essentially? Yes. Mm-hmm. So, finance committee. Yep. Yes. Sorry, I thought I said that to get with policy, but maybe I didn't. Okay. I think what I'd like to do is let's approve our board priorities separately, and then approve the all the rest of the minutes together if someone would like, or we can do them all individually.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes altogether.
Okay. So the regular, special, policy, and finance committee. Okay. A second.
Second.
Any discussion about the minutes? Questions, comments? Okay, Angie?
Yes.
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Gelding?
Yes.
Bergstrom?
Yes.
Bush? Yes. Dunn?
Yes. Okay, I'll take a motion to approve our please school board priorities as listed here, and then they'll be released to the public and posted on the website, and they'll be a standing item on our agendas moving forward.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Comments, questions?
Sorry, what are we doing?
We're approving the board priorities. It's listed as the working goal document draft. Focus area number 1 is recruitment and retention for teachers and staff. Number 2 is prioritizing understanding of the social and emotional needs of students and staff to develop a district-wide plan, create a school community rooted in belonging and physical and psychological safety for all. And then the third focus is on board governance. Go ahead and call a question.
Yes.
Yes.
Eisner?
Yes. Yes.
Gelding?
Yes.
Bergstrom?
Yes.
Dunn?
Yes. Okay, next we'll have communications. Andy, we'll start with you. Any board communications this last meeting?
I don't believe I have. And none that I can think of.
I had a student reach out who would like to start a new club at the high school, so I sent him to Mrs. Brunson. Yeah. D&D. Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. You'll learn.
I got an email from a parent with an article, which I'll forward to everybody after the meeting. It was just today. I took a brief read, and the article was about intramural sports as an option to sports teams, like our sort of chartered sports teams. So the goal being and focus being student health over or sort of winning or whatever. So it was interesting. And I had read a book that had similar themes last year. So I'll just share that with everybody.
I don't think I got anything new. Justin?
Nothing.
No official communication, just general conversations with community members about the school year being off to a good start. A few comments about the warm gym during a volleyball, recent volleyball match, and, pondering why we didn't have air conditioning throughout the high school building. That would be, and again, just kind of in conversation, more than like I'm seeking you out to have this conversation with a board member. That would be the extent of it.
Next is citizen communications. Anybody sign up? If anyone online wants to take your 3 minutes, you can use your raise your hand icon and we'll unmute you. Call on you. Going once, going twice. Okay. We'll move on to items for information and discussion. First is policy committee. Chair Skelding, do you want to
Sure.
summarize things?
Yes, we met last Wednesday, talked through 3 items. One was policy 188, which is the participation via technology in board meetings. And I would say the overall consensus was, 2023, we should have options for members to join remotely as life happens, and not everybody can be here every single Monday or once a month. So we looked at DeForest's policy and voted 3-0 that we would adopt something like that. So members could join remotely. There's no limit on how often they can join, but the overall intent is that we still try to be here once a month to discuss the school. I think the only thing we were going to add was like a verbal assurance before entering closed session that if you are remote, that you're assuring the public that nobody else is around you that could hear confidential information. Miss anything, Mitch?
And that, yeah, because we would do that in open session, it would be on record. It would be recorded through regular meetings. So somebody is on the record stating, yeah, no one is present at this time.
And then we talked through board norms. I think we had a first draft from member Johnston. And we kind of all discussed like we should probably have operational norms and then board norms, which are based on the Castle 5 framework, which the whole school kind of models their behavior on. So member Dunn worked up a draft that you circulated to everybody, and I think we'll review that in October at our next policy meeting. And then in the last 5 minutes, we talked through an annual board work plan, which was an annual calendar of, what we're going to work on each month as we start to look at a governance model. So Mr. Wainwright's going to work on a draft, and then we'll talk through that in October at our next meeting. That's it.
Great. So this revision of policy 188, this is officially the first reading of this meeting. Is that correct?
Yes,
Just for point of clarification.
so if anyone wishes to make an amendment or addition to that policy, suggested or recommended at this time before next month, where you would have the final, you would have a vote Make that the adopted version.
At the bottom of policy 188, will we consider this a revised version of the existing 188, or will we completely repeal the previous 188 and have this as a new policy? Like,
This
how
will-
is this dated?
This will in essence replace the current 188.
Okay.
So that document will come out and you're in essence revising that document to this current verbiage.
So then will we say that it was adopted on whatever, in our August meeting, or will we say it was revised in our August 2023 meeting? Or not August, October, thank you.
Right. It would be revised or revised at that October date. That's what it would state basically at the bottom. I just put that in there kind of as a placeholder so that when it's becomes the official policy, that date goes into that.
Even though it's a full replacement, it's not just going in and tweaking words because we already had a 188.
Correct.
We're just
It was
revising
originally
it.
adopted in 18.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
That makes sense since the spirit of the policy is the same.
Yep.
Even though we're totally changing kind of the spirit of it. And the information about the deforest would be removed at the bottom, right?
Correct.
That's how all our other policies are. They were adopted on a specific date and have the revisions.
Great. Any other comments or questions about that? Okay, thanks, Justin. Next, we'll go to Finance Committee update with Mr. Bush.
So we met after the policy meeting. We had one agenda item, and that was to review the difference between the anticipated budget and the final budget or audit in terms of the last fiscal year, and the surplus that we ended up with, and that we were all kind of surprised about, and what caused the surplus, and what caused the surprise that we could get out in front of in the future. We identified the surplus was caused by a few reasons. We picked up some ESSER funds from the government that are one-time funds that will not carry forward into the future, and nothing we can rely on, in the future as revenues. We had a fantastic year health-wise, and our deductibles were low. Our staff was healthy. We thank them for that. But that is also something we can't count on in the future to help with our budget deficit.
Open enrollment.
Yes, open enrollment numbers were good. Increased in, decreased out. And we discussed this October using the current numbers to the best of our knowledge in the budget we apply so that the difference isn't so large if there is another influx for us as the trend is shown. And there was one more.
Grants.
Additional
So
grant
there's the
writers,
grants,
yeah.
and then there was also, we as a board made a strategic decision last year when we recognized that the mill rate was going to decrease significantly to take advantage of the increased property tax values or property tax assessments to assess a mill rate more in line with what we had seen historically and put that towards the referendum debt on the elementary school. And so part of that surplus was actually a planned collection to be put towards that debt payment. So it was just being fiscal, being good stewards of our fiscal resources.
I recall, I think that move saved us over $100,000 in interest payment.
Yes.
Over the life of the
Over the
debt.
life of the loan, yes.
And we just discussed briefly some strategies we could use to, potentially avoid a surprise in the future. We recognize that the board put in place a couple years ago tracking the expenses versus actual budget versus accrued expenses monthly, but that we weren't reviewing revenues at all because those generally are pretty static. But that we will review in December revenues and expenses to make sure at that time we don't see a major difference that we could potentially get out in front of. And then we briefly just discussed what the potential surplus could do for future decision-making regarding budgeting and revenues and referendum.
Any questions? Christie, you were the one that weren't at the,
I was
Committee.
not able to be
okay.
there. Yeah.
So, I mean, if anyone has any questions about. Okay. Great, thanks. Next we'll go to building updates for the first week of school.
We'll bring Mr. Ingwell forward.
Okay.
Put him in the hot seat right out of the gate.
Couple things will be, I got to come up.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta-
Oh, yeah.
You wanna get?
We'll have one, just for the microphone for.
So a couple things will be, building, overall looks amazing. I think it's probably the best it's looked since renovation. So, maintenance crew in the summer did an amazing job overall, just getting the building ready to go. So I thank them for all their hard work, dedication. Meet the Teacher Night was probably, I think, the most well-attended, for over the last couple of years. So it was great to see all the families and new families, come to meet the teachers. So it was a great way to kind of start the school year and get, students in, and kind of see new families from there. So, first day was amazing. Obviously, for my transition to the principal was obviously my first day as principal, but it was great to see all smiles and faces and meet parents, in and out of the building. It was a great day overall, getting kids back in the building, that way from there too. Overall, like a lot of communication from parents was they felt welcoming. The staff was really helpful. So all those communications were great to hear from different parents that I met going in and out of the building from there. We had our first assembly last Friday, which I think was our best assembly ever. The kids were so attentive. We worked on a few things from recess rules, everything else. But it's probably the most engaging assemblies I've ever had and that I've ever ran. So it was really great to see, and I hope to continue that from there. Morning drop off, I feel like it's proceeding to get better. Kind of really get the flow of traffic in and out of the lower parking lot. From there, I think it's getting better and better. But again, it's still a work in progress of just getting that traffic to be safe, but also again, being effective coming in and out. End of the day, I think we're actually going to work on that a little bit this week, but again, end of day is harder at this point in time to really kind of a great answer of like how to fix the traffic flow. I know we're going to have the media group from the high school come down and kind of do some videos and create some resources to share out to parents of like what we are trying to use for our procedures, which will be a great resource to share out to kind of help promote our safety and what we want to see from there. So that's kind of in the works of what we're trying to get that route. I think Warner Kids Club was our first day today. I think it was well attended. I was in and out a couple of times from there. So that's great for us to have the opportunity to support families coming in. I think today we had our first family partnership committee meeting, just kind of get things started and kind of start talking about homecoming that's coming up very shortly, and some new activities that we'll have for the students and for the community to all participate in. So that was a great first week.
One of the things we talked about too with the pickup at the end of the day was the use of a drone to capture an overhead image. You want to go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so the thing I'm looking at is trying to figure out the traffic flow of in and out. Our biggest thing is obviously to address safety and make sure, again, students get home safely. And, you know, with the parking lot, with the way it is, there's not a great amount of space for a lot of cars. And again, I love the fact that parents want to pick up their students and their child from there. But with so many parents coming, which is great to have that problem, but the traffic flow in there isn't ideal. And so we really want to look at how do we address that as a bigger picture. So again, there's not really a quick fix to that. It's more like, let's look at the bigger picture of how do we address it and then make the best choice to kind of move forward to kind of make sure, again, safety is our number one, from there. So it's just kind of making sure we look at all avenues before we make our final decision on how to fix that. So.
You happen to have a kids club enrollment update for us? You know how many students we have? I'm sorry, that's putting you on the spot. That way I did not ask for
Right
that in
now, we
advance.
average in the afternoon about 25, 29.
Okay,
From there in the morning, right now it's somewhere about 2 to 5, somewhere in that,
Okay.
depends on the day.
Okay.
From there. So again, I think goal was, obviously to keep getting more. I think our goal was number 40 was the kind of the number we want to kind of shoot for. But I think as the year goes, it's going to get bigger and bigger, from there based on, I think it's a great resource for parents to use. So I think we'll keep growing from there. I think the big thing would be to communicate out more and more of the opportunity. Some parents might not know about it, from there. So we'll just keep working on that.
Can parents still submit, like enroll in it, or are there
Yes,
cutoffs? Okay.
All it is basically submit in, what days you want, from there, so they can join at any time. Just, they have to submit that form, just in Mo. They have to contact Mo to get that form filled out.
and have we started to consider any sort of kind of scholarship or financial assistance to the Kids Club program for students who would benefit from having that as a resource, but their family doesn't have the means to take advantage of that?
When I talked weekly Friday.
Okay. Okay, the seed has been planted. Very good. Thank you.
How do you feel, new staff or new to grade or subject staff, has gotten started?
Overall, staff is, I think, amazing. I think, again, as I walk around and check in with teachers, everyone feels supported, from there. The great thing is every grade level has veteran teachers that are amazing as well too, to support their peers from there, of helping them out for colleagues. So those are all just great things that we already do. Questions for me? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. McGraw.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Pick it up. I do want to say, we did have the fair off before school here. That turned out great. I was down there for a couple hours. It's amazing to see the hard work and effort and energy that those students put into that stuff. I think that kind of goes at times probably unnoticed, but you get down there and you see so many kids with all these projects. You're like, wow, I didn't know you could do that. Wow, that's really cool. So it was really neat to get down there. So thank you for letting us kind of develop that calendar around that, because it is an important part of our community. So just thank you for that. And to those kids, credit to them. Awesome work. So I'll let you kind of take it off here. We'll both talk.
I think we would both agree it's been a busy week at the middle school, high school.
Yes.
So day one started off the day very positively with a all school assembly.
Yep.
Which
It was an all school assembly.
we've
We have
never
not done it
this
that
before.
way. No, we have not done it that way. It's really
The
cool.
energy level was high.
Yeah.
We did staff introductions and
It was also hot in the gym that day.
it wasn't working. We also did some games
Yep.
with everybody in the crowd, which it was amazing. Having some prizes and little t-shirt throwing, which
Yep,
really
so we had all the staff be introduced, because we do have some new staff members. We obviously have a lot of new kids up. A lot of the middle school kids won't necessarily see the high school teachers every day, so it's like kind of nice to put a face to it. But yeah, they threw out some different shirts. They get some big old cheers, and it was really cool to see that. We also had door prizes for that day that we drew out. Played heads or tails, which is a fan favorite up here. So
the
it was really
energy
fun.
level was
Yeah,
high.
it
There were
was
so
awesome.
many smiles.
It was awesome.
In the gym, or sorry, in the cafeteria beforehand, I was hearing a lot of nerves, especially from sixth graders as I was walking around. And by the time I checked in on lots of them after the assembly and homeroom, they were like, kind of forgot I was nervous. So we thought it was a great way to really start things off positively. So in general, students are acclimating themselves with the school and getting to know their schedules, and what to bring for each class period is a really big deal. So really just trying to figure that out. It's a big transition for everybody every year, even if they've been here last year from 6th to 7th, it looks a lot different. And even from 7th to 8th, there's some different changes in the schedule. So overall, I talked with sixth grade teachers to see if there was anything that I could share out with you all. And they all said the transition from fifth to sixth has been wonderful. They're getting to know their schedule. They know right where to go. And the next thing is now what to bring to each class. But they said for this, every fifth grade group coming in, they've never changed from room to room for their classes. So they said they're doing remarkable learning where to go all the time. So, and even planning ahead if they have when they're upstairs, if they have something else, they might need to bring 2 things with them so they're not coming down. So they're really getting a lot of responsibility. I've talked to many students, but a lot have said this school is huge, but it's less scary when you get to know your schedule and where you're going. So they're already feeling better, especially second week in general. Everybody is feeling really good. I don't have any calls saying, can you come up here and walk this student back to another class? So I think people are feeling welcomed and safe in our schools. Let's see, what else do I have? We are also taking more time to get to know our students. Our first 2.5 weeks, we're spending more time in our homerooms. So we have every homeroom has 12 students. We're doing some getting to know you activities, some different things just to build the community within this. And I'm not sure if you're familiar, but we keep our students from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so they're with us. We were sad when we looked around and we saw our 9th graders weren't in their original spots. So we're going to be writing them letters, just wishing them well. And but we've really become tight in these first 2.5 weeks. We're really trying to start that off right. We also have a lot of new faces in our building, and from all the conversations and just noticing them in different areas at recess, at lunch, in the hallways, everyone that is new has been connecting with other people already. And that feels fantastic watching that happen, especially for the first time, watching that connection start. So that's been very helpful. The other thing is, this goes back a little bit. We did do 6th grade orientation, and Matt was there with us. This was very well attended. We only had 2 families that did not come, and we made sure to connect with those students the first day to help them get acclimated and have a tour of the building. So, but in general, that's an incredible turnout. During that time, we went through things that would be similar in their schedules and different, just to try to have them connect those. We went over expectations, did a tour of the building. Also, Matt graciously taught.
We taught families. So within Skyward, now attendance is done through Skyward. I know Ms. Brinkman, Ms. Lovinger have sent out emails about that, but I tried to go through that with the 6th grade families. Also, how to view the grade book, because they now have more grades and stuff, so they can go on and log on and see the grade book. We actually at the high school, they had to get logged in today, and kids register through Skyward for classes, but we wanted to make sure they all got on and they know how to get to their grades, because now Google Classroom is working really well, and it'll actually pull Skyward and Google Classroom will merge that stuff together. That was new last year. We piloted it, so it's starting to work. We'll get it through everybody here eventually, but so it's really nice. So grades put into Google Classroom don't have to wait. You put it to Skyward, because that'll merge over here too. So those are some neat things about Skyward, as parents at that age are like, oh, okay, so now I have more access to grades and stuff, and see what they're missing for assignments and stuff. So it's been nice. And at that night, it was very nice to see that. So
overall, very, very positive start to
Yeah.
the school. It's been great working with Matt. Every time I have a question, he's right there to help. So it's been very positive.
I think our new staff have felt very welcomed, are doing extraordinary things. I think everybody's doing extraordinary things over the last 5 days we've been in school, but it's been a really good, fun, positive 5 days. People seem very comfortable. We have some staff things coming up too that we're working on. So we have a potluck this Friday, kind of just to celebrate getting through the 2 weeks and to start that, and just some other things that we're looking at doing as a staff. I will give you a little foresight with Tom. With the Family and Education Partnership, we talked a little bit about this around homecoming. We're going to incorporate sources of strength. So that can play into that. There's details on that coming. We're hoping to do some community event on that Wednesday night. There's a lot of stuff that's got to get turned in here in the next 3 weeks to do that, though. It makes me a little nervous, but we did start talking about that with that group tonight. I've talked with Danny and Erica. We're going to try and do kind of like a community event up here at the high school where it's like a 5K or 2K walk. They were supposed to do a color run last year, or they had the opportunity to. We didn't get around to that. We're going to try and incorporate that a little bit differently than your normal color run where you get color thrown at you. But just to incorporate a little bit more of that. And then we've talked with Tom as well. That first Friday is our first sources day. So we're going to take mornings and do sources. I think I explained that before. So that one will be more high school, middle school, mixing in with some of the elementary and doing some fun activities. Healthy activities is the October part of the wheel. So there's a lot to do in the next couple of weeks.
Going along with the sources, it was brought to my attention that everybody in elementary has the opportunity to be in the parade for homecoming. We get to middle school and kind of stops, and then we have that opportunity again in the high school. So going along with sources, we thought we would have a banner, and those who would be willing to walk down the parade hand out just a little pamphlet to people around the community, just explaining a little bit about what sources is, and to give those middle schoolers a chance to be in as well.
Lot to do.
Are more students becoming interested in sources?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's really going to grow. We are looking at setting up our next student, I want to call them student leaders / adult training here. Like, so we did that one last March. So at some point I will probably be coming to you guys, or Mitch will send you an email when we get the trainer kind of locked down, because we will probably have to do a virtual day in order to get that training done again, just like we did last March. But just be on the lookout for that at some point. We're hoping November sometime, because we don't want to wait till the end of the year to do the training again. We want to get these kids and move forward, but they're going to help with this homecoming thing first, and then we're going to look a little bit more at that. So.
And I've had people ask, are we doing student council? Are we merging it with sources? And we have people in middle school who want to be on that need to help out.
Yeah, I do think it's going to grow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The 6th grade orientation, is that like what you guys do for 8th graders going into high school, like getting them ready?
I would say it's a little different, because the 8th grade, they're the new freshman ones kind of in the spring. We did that so that they could register with their parents, and so the parents kind of have more of a feel on it. This is more, I would say, just an introduction, an overview of, hey, this is what it looks like up here, because they don't have to register for classes, obviously, but it's some good guidelines, some things that, hey, maybe you knew this, maybe you didn't know this. So I say there's some similar aspects and information, but a lot of the freshman one is around registering for classes and answering some questions that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Both were phenomenal this last year. Any other questions?
One of Vicky's things kind of as she was going out was replacing the lockers in the middle school. Is that something we got done this summer, or we didn't have the resources for that?
We did not replace any lockers this summer. No.
Nope. We're gonna, at an operations committee, we need to talk about a 10-year plan, and that's one of the things,
Okay.
the items that would be part of that
Yeah.
10-year plan.
Right.
Writing that down.
I will say, as things come up in lockers, we let Dave know, and he gets those lockers fixed, so he gets
Okay.
them fixed right
Done a
away.
really good job.
I'm kind of shocked that you and Andy aren't saying, well, those lockers were good enough for me when I went through school, they should be good enough.
Well, those lockers were good enough for me.
Did they,
They came from the old
I
school.
was gonna ask, did they move from the old building?
I never had them because we got new lockers in high school, but it
You were never at the old school?
was for 2 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
Will we have, just for preparation, will we have STAR or that first set of testing results for October?
So our reading and math, 6th, 7th, and 8th are all having students
We'll
this week.
have that initial.
Started
in
data
October.
you'll have. Just a reminder, we have the October meeting, and then the next day we get the state report card stuff. So
We can't talk about tests that we can't discuss, the tests which shall not be named.
That's correct.
Start date, it will be October. And the state report card will be November. Is that the same for forward testing?
Start test at
Yeah.
elementary.
Start testing?
Yeah.
Great, okay.
Yeah, the elementary test is still tied in with the ACT and the middle school testing on the state test. And the release date is all the same.
K2 reading readiness is done at the end of the month as well.
Do we have that for October?
Yeah, they have the same window, STAR and the reading readiness benchmark screeners are the same.
Great.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that's something.
in the history of it, it was evident you guys were tag teaming a lot and playing together, so that makes sense to me.
This has been great.
Okay, super.
Timelines. I just have a couple of district assessments or district updates, if that's okay. So today, Mitch and I got notification that we got the official approval from the state that we passed our homeless compliance review that was initiated last year. So that was exciting to hear. And then we've been fortunate. The last month, we've been notified that we received 2 grants that were written last spring. So the first one is the Education for Homeless Children and Youth grant. It's $25,000 for 3 years. And then we have some stuff set aside in that to expand. My admin assistant has now become the outreach coordinator. So we're doing some further outreach with our families, making sure that they have access to literacy. And then the grant's also written for some tutoring opportunities during both the school year and the summer for some of our students who might need it. Is that $25,000 a year for 3 years, or is that $25,000? $25,000 a year for 3 years. It will renew for 3 years. And then last Thursday, I think Mitch found out, we were notified we were awarded the AODA grant. So for a school our size, you can write up to $15,000. It's a 2-year $15,000 grant, and we received that. And that one is largely written specific for expanding sources of strength. So it includes some money for training more elementary staff. So I think when we first did it, we only had 4 staff trained. So this would expand it to hopefully 1 staff member per grade level. And then it will also continue the middle school, high school work. So bringing in the national trainer for our students, for our adults. And so that was written specifically for sources work to continue. And it's a 2-year grant. So.
That's awesome.
But that's the only updates that I had. But since we were just notified, I thought you guys might want to know as well.
Thank you.
One question. How do you feel our staffing solutions are working out so far? Honest assessment.
So just last week alone, I think we registered 6 new students. We have a lot of new students in the school, which is wonderful. A lot of people continue to want to come to Mineral Point.
It's mostly elementary.
No, they're all, what'd you get, 4, 5 new high school students this year?
Do they have IEPs or?
These 5 do, yes. I mean, we've registered more than that. So,
Okay, so your department's registered 6 new students.
we registered more than 6. We've probably registered a dozen.
Okay.
So, it's continuing to be a work in progress because we have ever changing needs. But the opportunity to have Miss Langreck here as another teacher has been really good. I mean, I'm hoping she would say the same thing, but we're switching to some new progress monitoring data tools, and she actually is familiar with them. So she's actually been able to take the lead and help some of our other staff learn that tool a little bit better, which has been great this first week of school. So as you start to kind of ingest this additional information about new students and what their resource needs are, I would ask that we think about the best way to maximize resources. If it is better to think about, rather than bringing on 2 or 3 additional support staff, if they're hard to find, but bringing on a teacher, a certified special education teacher would be a better way to meet those needs. And I know you're constantly doing that, but. And then, just on the pupil service side, Mitch is aware of this, but we have some complexities with some changing population. So last week we enrolled 2 students from Mexico
Oh.
who do not speak English. And they have not yet started, but they came to register and will be starting in the next month. So the population of our students and the needs of our students is ever changing too, as we need to be responsive to change and shifting. And both of those parents work for the same company, and leads me to wonder if we might be getting even more students.
An opportunity for increased diversity in our population.
Exactly, but
Fantastic.
so it might change the needs of how we can meet their needs while they're here in the US and learning English for the first time, for the first year, especially of school. So
Since I'm guessing you probably have this fairly handy, could you maybe send us where we're at in terms of caseload per staff, assistants per staff, and kind of what, back when we talked about it last, kind of the goal number was, just so we can kind of have that resource.
I will send those numbers to you.
And you know where, or potentially what transfer of services this influx of students might create?
So I put our transfer of service in last fall or last spring when it first opened in June. I can look it up because I sent it to Mitch and Danielle when we first did it. But I don't remember what that number was off the top, but I can look. So that closes Friday.
Okay.
The first level of it closes Friday. So, and some of these will be, transfer services, that iffy one. So we could do them, if they move right now, we could do it for this year, or we could wait for next year. We do it right now. We're just supposing what our cost increase would be. If we wait, then we know what our actual costs were. So there's like this 2-year window of influx, but I don't remember what the number was off the top of my head. It was a couple months ago when I did it, but I can look.
It'd be good for us to know that, just so, that's revenue that was created simply from students who need our resources moving in. It would probably justify
Yeah, and then,
any decisions we make.
there's some parameters because it has to be a new position that was created from the student moving in. So when we're able to take them and absorb, it's hard. So sometimes like speech is hard because we have 1.4 this year. We have 1.4 teachers and they just absorb. So there's no new costs, but it still adds to their caseload of overall management. So, we did increase our speech back another 10%. We went from 1.3 to 1.4. And maybe we should have done 1.5. But OT and PT obviously are new costs because we contract out with them. But it's, the assistants or like the special ed teachers, when they just absorb them, transfer of services only for when we have to hire new staff for them. It's a new cost to the district. So, so even like ELL is a transfer of service cost. If we were to take on, if we needed to meet some needs and there was a cost for these new students, that could be a transfer of service cost for next year, because obviously we don't have the staff for that right now. So, so transfer, it's great. It absolutely is, but it's not always quite as great as what we hope, because we have to be able to tie it to a specific cost change.
Is there like a standard measurement of when you can't absorb anymore? Like, what's the difference between just having stellar staff who keep taking on more and more?
I think that comes back to Joni's of like me being able to advocate for my staff of right now we're just herding cats and holding bodies and we're not being as effective as we could be if we looked at a new teacher or breaking this up a different way. So I think that's why we always monitor what our caseloads are and the complexity. It's never easy because one student's not the same as another student. There's just no great way to figure that out, but we do try.
But that's on us, or that's on you.
Yeah,
to do that. There's not.
And that's why we do those like recommended caseload limits, because usually that number kind of fits in. And, to be honest, it's sometimes a small number, but 6-year-olds with special needs is very different than a classroom of first graders with, so. But I can get you that number, yes.
I was just gonna say that kind of ties back into kind of the open enrollment numbers that come in January when we talk about we can't accept any more students open enrolled into these programs because these staff members are full working with these numbers. So it is there is.
And on the
Pretty good
benefit
handle
of
on
this,
that.
we were very conservative with our open enrollment numbers. So all these students that we're enrolling now are residing in our district. They are a full-time student, but when we talk about space limits, we always say it's only for open enrolled. It doesn't prevent those who move here. And these are all students who are moving into our district. And there's been a lot of them this year.
What are our translation services for the Spanish speaking families?
Wonderful question. I'm still working. So we reached out to CISA 3 for some assistance. CISA 3 provides the Title III, which is the language limited English proficiency ELL. Basically, our dollars all go to them because we don't have enough of a population to keep them. So Mitch and I reached out to them for some clarification and what they could provide and some training for our staff. Thankfully, one of our families came Friday to register, and I was able to grab Mr. Ponsler. In this case, the dad spoke English very well, and we had talked a couple times, but his wife did not. And so when we were trying to communicate, so Ryan was amazing and gave up his prep to come and help us talk with the family and make sure we were clear on next steps and everything. There are transcription services you can purchase, like when we're talking about, if we want to send home a document, like IEP wise, our paperwork can be transcribed already into Spanish. The only thing that anything I add to it or we type in, we have to translate. The school's website can already be switched over to another language. Joelle showed me how to do that the other day. And it doesn't switch over like the Facebook things, but it switches over all of the content specific. So thankfully, I feel like I have a really good working relationship with the director over in Darlington, who has been through this process. So I think one of the things I'm going to do in the next couple of weeks is go over and talk to their ELL director and just say, like, think back to when you guys first started. What were the first steps? What did you do? And right now, it's a lot of just reaching out of who on our staff is, bilingual or at least conversational in another language, because we are fortunate to have some staff in both buildings, but most of our teachers are not. Jokingly, one of the fourth grade teachers kept saying, yep, my French is coming back really well. And, the other one took Latin or something like that. So about as good as my kids' Greek knowledge is going to, that's going to pay off dividends. So, so just trying to figure out who on staff we have that can be a resource to us as well. I'm fluent enough that I can read it, and I understood Ryan when he was talking to the parent, but I can't converse it very, very well. So I can put it in Google Translate and go through and be like, oh yeah, that's not the word I want, and kind of change it that way. But those are all things that we have to learn. But I do know that there's companies that you can hire if it gets to the point where it's bigger documents that I've done that before with a previous district when we had to translate some larger documents for them. So,
I wonder too, with the belonging, language is such an important part of culture and identity and all of that. Darlington probably has some good insights about stuff they wish they would have done when they started that they've learned.
Yeah. And I'll speak for Matt, but Matt's got a good connection at Darlington for us. Yeah. His wife is one of the ELL instructors over there. So I know her very well. I can, hit her up, but I think we have at least a nice district around us who we have a great partnership with that can hopefully kind of lead us in the way that would be helpful if this is a population that continues to grow. And even if it's only the 2, it's still a population that needs to be met. So
there's also the multicultural outreach program at Southwest Cap.
Thank you. I did not know that. I also just hit up one of our board members before the meeting just to kind of pick his brain as well. So, I know there's probably people in the community, so and I don't know them. So just making sure, Will is able to give me a couple of names.
I'll email you.
So, yeah. So, that to me is a lot of it is just knowing the connections and knowing who I can ask, and I don't have a problem asking because I don't know. So isn't one of our new hires, wasn't their former role in an immersion school? So Miss Martin at the elementary school and Chad both taught at an immersion school in the Dominican Republic. So very comfortable speaking. I don't know what licensure, if they hold proper licensures type things, but being able to converse on a day-to-day basis, absolutely, they would be comfortable with that.
Keelan was Verona School District, English is a second language.
Okay.
Like coordinator.
And I don't know that, so I might look into that as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
So,
We'll have someone, at least one person each
So
building.
I think she
Yeah.
was teaching
Yeah.
both in Spanish and English the last 6 years in Verona.
Yeah.
and I know Chad highlighted, in his interview, how he was able to incorporate multiple language and cultural representation within his FIED program as well. So it's important to both of them as well, I know.
And I can send this to you. There's a group called Cafe con Amigos, which is a group of people from Mineral Point that were meeting with the high school Spanish club at Cafe 43.
And I knew that,
So
like,
there's like a few adults
Yeah.
too that I don't know if they'd be helpful as
well, I think those are
as,
just resources. That was one I had said, like,
tutors or whatever.
yeah, I mean, I knew our Spanish 5 students did that, and I was like, but I don't know who's in that group. Like, though, even just those were starting conversation
Sure.
pieces. So, you know, I don't know, like, we haven't gone through everything to know, like, if we were to need an interpreter and licensing and those types of things, but I think like the informal interpreting, we have some ideas and some things thrown around, so.
Good thing with this language is that generally, you know, the younger the kids are, the faster they pick it up. And my experience has been that kids end up interpreting for their parents pretty quickly, you know, because their brains are malleable. They get it faster. It just gets harder and harder the older you get. My mom on Duolingo
We've enrolled,
is an example.
we've enrolled several students who the student interpreted at registration for their mom. So, so yeah, just kind of a changing population and some changing demographics, which will be great for our community, but something that is new for us, so.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Which, when would we see enrollment numbers?
Well, this Friday is the third Friday count in September, so we should have an accurate enrollment number after this week.
Would you just email those out to us? Or?
Yes,
Okay, cool.
it probably wouldn't be this week.
Yeah.
It might be the next week's update where I would be able to share out that information.
Sounds good. And just, I think, you know, kind of compared to last year, open enrollment plus minus by grade or whatever. I think last year we got a list of like, I don't know why we did, but like of all the kids and which classes, like the names of kids and which classes they were in and all that.
Shouldn't be. You shouldn't have gotten any names.
I think we got numbers.
We can't get that.
Yeah. Great. Maybe I did.
Maybe you filled in the names. No, what will be the difficult part? I was come back to the very warm and fuzzy butts in the seat number is different than our total FTE because we only get portion of 4K students that we get to count. They don't count as a full student, but it is a full student in our classrooms. Then open enrollment ins and outs, you add and subtract some of those numbers. So it's an odd number that comes up, and then the DPI number on our revenue limit worksheet is a 3-year rolling average. So I'm hoping to see, and I believe our summer school numbers will go up, which will add to our enrollment, but then you get 40% and then 30% for your summer school numbers. So our total enrollment has gone up on our revenue limit worksheet every year in the last few years, which is a good number, which is a good thing to have. But yes, I can get you those enrollment numbers.
In October is when the revenue limit worksheet, like when we'll get the updated version. Is that right? With the levy?
Yeah, we'll meet on Monday. And I believe that it's that Friday that the DPI releases additional information into the revenue limit worksheet. And then we work hard from that moment on as to what we're going to do and how the final levy will play out at the last Monday of the month. We have a board meeting to certify the levy.
Okay, that's the special session.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's on the 30th, tentatively.
Yeah, whatever
That's
that
the
last
last,
Monday
that's
is.
the last Monday. I think there are. It's the 4th.
So
The fourth Monday of October.
23rd.
So the 13th, Friday the 13th
Perfect.
is when the DPI will release the number because the 15th is on a Sunday.
Okay.
That first drop will come on the 13th, and that will be, we have an estimate of what the property values are for our school district property. They always warn you not to use that number because a lot of things can change in there. So that's when we'll get the actual on the 13th. So our board meeting is the 9th. On that Monday, we'll get information on the 13th, and then we'll turn around and have that special meeting on the 23rd then. So no phone calls or emails. It'll be busy.
Yes. Yeah. I'll put that on the Google Calendar too. All right. Any other questions before we move on? We'll go to the timeline for a possible operating referendum.
So the main numbers are 70 and 10. Well, if and when the board decides you need to go for an operating referendum when that vote is made. Basically, you have, you're looking at 70 days. So kind of 70 days from the election. So if you're looking at April 2nd, January 23rd makes up that's the 70 days. So the school board shall schedule a referendum to be held and provided election is not to be held sooner than 70 days after the filing of the resolution. You have to have the language in place, and the election can't be any sooner than 70 days. And the 10 days comes that once you adopt a resolution, then the school board shall notify the DPI of the scheduled date of the referendum and submit a copy of the resolution to the DPI. And the last time we went for referendum, I don't know of too many districts that don't use them. We use Quarles and Brady to help determine the language of the resolution. So there'll be some communications back and forth. I have talked to a representative from Baird who may attend the October meeting and just kind of help guide some questions. It was so part of information discussion. There'll be a representative from Baird potentially joining us through Zoom to kind of help talk through some things and cement some ideas in place. What are you thinking? What are you thinking? Is it now? Is it going to be an April election? It will be a presidential election in November 24. So you could wait until that election, which then kind of pushes the time. It'd be 70 days prior to that November date. That just gives you a little more time to put together whatever kind of language, so you would need a dollar amount. Is it going to be recurring, non-reoccurring? If it's non-reoccurring, how long you staggered in? Is it just going to be, $200,000 a year for 3 years? Or is it recurring, which then kind of helps what's called reset your base? In other words, what's your per pupil reimbursement? So you'll need to have those kind of details worked out.
Can you just talk me through the timeline? If we're talking about April 2024, then those funds are available when we're planning for the 24-25 school year?
Correct.
But if we're talking November 2024, then those funds would not be available until the 25-26 school year.
That is correct.
And then in terms of making that decision and getting numbers to make that decision, when do we typically finalize the budget? Like I see typically September is adopting a final budget. Or which is that for this current operating year?
Typically yes, but
Okay.
with so many unknowns, knowing that we're entering this fiscal year with a deficit to be able to set that budget, I'll have better numbers when the DPI releases the information to the revenue limit worksheet.
Okay, so then we'd also want to have that 10-year maintenance plan. And I'm just thinking about the moving parts to be able to make a clear decision about which timeline and when.
I would hesitate to worry about the 10-year maintenance plan because they would be looking at Fund 46 expenses, not necessarily Fund 10 expenses. The operating referendum would be for the Fund 10 expenses.
There's nothing that could show up in that maintenance plan that would impact the referendum.
Ask that question again,
I'm
please.
just trying to think about what could show up in a maintenance plan, especially of that longevity. We don't have enough, like, I don't have a clear picture, you all might from past history. But what might show up in that plan that would impact our decision-making around a referendum, either amount or timing?
I would think that if anything, it would affect a capital funds referendum. So, for example, our elementary school remodel was a capital fund referendum. So if there's something on the 10-year maintenance plan, I don't know if you would include any kind of facilities improvement master plan in that. We have some things we want to do on this campus. There have been requests for wrestling room or, connect the ag building, air conditioners, more storage. There's lots of kind of wish lists, that may end up on a capital funds referendum at some point, but
Right,
it wouldn't.
we'd want to know so that if we're going to put an operation if I'm Rachel Public and thinking like, didn't I just do a referendum for the school last year and now I have to do another one? What's this one for?
Exactly.
So just being able to see that.
For sure.
feels
If we're
important.
thinking timing of two different referenda, we definitely want to not stack them close together.
Right. And maybe you all have a sense already that they won't be, or I just don't have a picture for that long term. So that's what I'm
That
trying to
Fund
get at.
46 is a capital maintenance account.
Yeah. Mhm.
So money has been deposited into that account so that when we talk about, are we going to do new lockers in the
Right.
middle school, that
Yeah.
can come out of Fund 46. And this is more on the auditing side. When Fund 46 was originally created, there was a plan in place. Here's what that money was going to help cover.
Yeah.
Those things have been knocked off that list.
Yeah.
The auditors had just recommended that we redo another 10-year plan. So upgrading the high school science classrooms, they brought all of the old equipment from the old school into the current school, and it's certainly lived its adult life and should be given a proper burial at some point in time. So updating the science rooms. My big fear is the building is 26, 27 years old, pushing, 30s around the corner. At some point in time, we're going to have to replace boilers. So something like that could come out of Fund 46. It would be on that 10-year plan as to when you would do it. We could do some technology upgrades out of Fund 46.
No,
Like I
definitely.
said,
I think great. Yes. I
So
just
that
want to
would
have
be
a picture
yeah.
of all the moving parts to make a decision.
Right.
So that
And
it's not
then-
like,
and those are-
oh, that would have been good to know 2
Right.
years
And
ago.
those are two different referendum
Right.
questions.
Absolutely. I
One,
get
the
it.
operating is simply, we need the money
We
because
have to pay people.
yeah, like everybody else, my water bill at this building has gone, or my water bill for the district's gone up 60%, just like it went up 60% at home.
Yeah.
My natural gas bill has gone up, just like it has for everybody. Those are things, our operating expenses, keeping the lights on, having both buildings open 24/7.
Are salaries in an operating budget ever?
It could very well be, yes.
How do we gauge public appetite for having two referendum questions on the ballot at the same time? If there would be an operating question and a capital question to address some of these, not a huge, not something like the elementary remodel, but something significant enough where we are addressing all those things that we're talking about Fund 46 that might be more than Fund 46 can handle, whether it's enclosing the walkway to the egg shop and replacing the boilers and potentially addressing the fitness equipment or facilities or the lack of a lifting space. Those are the biggest ones. Updating the science labs.
Is that what Corrals and Brady do? Is that part of their?
We have conducted surveys. Sometimes Baird would be able to help craft a survey and get it out to the community. So, I mean, that is one possibility to gauge whether or not there is an appetite for two referendum questions at the same time.
Like we should probably figure out how much money we might ask for and the operational referendum first
Really, no question.
to determine that.
And I would not want to risk an operational referendum not passing by putting it next to a capital improvements referendum. But I also don't want to miss the opportunity. If the public says, yes, we want to invest in this, I don't want to miss that opportunity either. So I just want to make sure we've thought through all the different facets of what we're going to bring forward.
And I didn't mean to suggest by asking these questions that we should put a capital referendum like question on the table. It just feels like it's part of that holistic picture so that we do get a chance to, if we're going to reach out to the community, find out. So that we're not just in isolation looking at just
Well,
operations.
A good example of that is that we did this elementary school remodel and then, we didn't know COVID was going to happen. Like a lot of things happened after that was approved, but now there's no daycare in Iowa County. And so we missed an opportunity to build essentially a daycare facility and provide 3 months to pre-K daycare, which is Southwestern's doing and other schools are doing. So I think it's the right thing to do to ask as many questions as we can about what trends are out there, what other schools doing because I think you're right. You don't want to be asking every year for a referendum. Yep.
So again, we'll be continuing the conversation at the October meeting when we kind of have some maybe clearer financial picture and forecasting from our Baird rep. So that's what we're planning on getting.
We
think
think
about
their conversations with the city as well as what they're planning.
Exactly.
I was just going to say the other thing that comes to mind in terms of the speed with which everything changes now is job market and preparing students for the big world, from a small community perspective. If we could, maybe that's something, and I'm happy to pull research together, is to be able to pull what are the job projections and the job markets and the types of work and the types of skills that our kids are going to be facing, even if you're in high school freshman now. The world is going to be different in 4 years. So do we know what those projections look like now, knowing that they'll change? And are we preparing our kids for that potential reality?
Mr.
And that's
Austin,
part of the discussion.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Austin, that program that you showed us last time, didn't that have something on there about job projections?
So,
Yes.
so if you dig into it, and you explore the community projections.
Is that kind of like a report that you could pull, or would you have to be a student going in individually and digging in a little bit deeper? Okay.
After their surveys,
Yeah.
and they dig down into oh, I want to look into being an accountant,
Mhm.
then those numbers pull through. But
Yeah.
I don't think there's an overall job.
Okay.
But that would be a really helpful data point to say, okay, this number of kids, expressed interest in whatever field. Can we match their skill desire right now? And then what's the job projection? But then our real kids get a chance for us to start looking at the data of what they want to be, and do we?
And are we unable to match that because of our
Because of-
science lab?
Right,
Right.
exactly. So all this stuff feels like part of that budgeting process. If it's easy to push a button and pull the report, it feels like a no-brainer starting point. Okay, and we don't have to do it right now. I'm just trying to think about what do we have access to that's not a huge lift, it doesn't require a new survey, that.
The thing about
Start.
Zello is it is more. Say it's more college-based, the way that the activities are set up, they're more driven towards career and that. So you're not getting all the trades
Oh, I
information
see.
in that. It's not, it's a work in progress from the state in that way. Because we have the students going through doing these activities this week here. But it is more driven towards the 4-year, not necessarily tech school, but more 4-year, how do you get to this? What are you interested in that way? Doesn't necessarily pull into all the trades, all that exploration of that. Still have to, that's part of the reason why we try to offer.
I don't know, I was thinking more Southwest Tech might be able to give us some of that information. They might be able to give us information that they're receiving that says, in 5 years from now, there's there's a massive shortage of welders, or there's a massive shortage of bricklayers, even things like that, where,
Teachers, nurses.
right, they
Yeah.
might be able to help provide some of that information.
Yeah.
Through our PAC meeting, there is a representative from from Southwest Tech that's been attending our PAC meetings. It might be the next PAC meeting, I might just be able to ask for something like that, see what they can produce for us.
Mitch, do you think later next month we can see what like a 10-year CapEx plan looks like?
Sure.
Just trying to think, like, we tend to carry like 700 grand in that thing, and then we add 200,000 every year. We want to keep a balance of X. Like, what does that runway look like? How much money would we have to ask for potentially if we wanted everything on a list?
We'd have to put a list together first.
Yeah, but I think we have,
That's what you're asking for.
right, I think you have some,
I have
Kind of a
I have
list.
several things that I think fall into that 10-year plan.
Yeah. We can start there.
Yeah, and because the issue becomes, well, if I do it now, this year, it's X. If I wait and do this project next year, it's X times
Right.
15% markup, or 30% markup, or 6, whatever, so that's what's the tough part of it.
Yeah.
Well, if we start with this dollar amount, by the time we get to year 10, we're doing this one, we've got this dollar amount. It's like, well, no, we have to add markup in all of those things as well. To me, the bottom line is you're going to want to know what would it cost to replace a boiler, and that has to be guaranteed in the fund, not to drop below that, to be able to handle that emergency.
How long could what we have now, if we didn't add any more money to it, last us?
Then on how many projects and the cost of those projects you're willing to undertake on a yearly basis.
Well, boilers like what? How much? 300?
Yeah, somewhere in there, I would say. So
Years.
that's almost half of what you're looking at.
Two boiler lights.
Two boilers in the bottom. Sounds like farming, just,
Mhm.
right? Like, oh, everything broke at once.
Mhm.
Right? Like, oh, we're good. No, we're not. No, we're not.
Yeah, I can see the water line. I'm not quite there yet, but I can see the water line, and now I can't.
Any other questions about timeline?
Yes,
for
but I will refrain.
referendum? Hey,
I just think January is going to be here before we know it.
Well,
So
that's,
know.
I'm like
Yeah.
feeling some like anxiety looking at the.
And I think that's why trying to get Jordan from Baird to meet with you next month still creates kind of a crunch a little bit, but I mean, at least it gives you some more information.
I think my main question would be, can we, so we have this big surplus this year. Where does that sort of put us for 23, 24?
It's not a big surplus. And, right?
in the legislature or?
No, I mean, just I just don't want to paint a picture like we're good.
Yeah.
Our
Right.
surplus that we were
Oh,
talking about earlier.
budgetary surplus.
Sure.
Yeah.
Bigger than expected.
Right?
We had
I'm
a
not sure what-
surplus. No, that's a
Thank
good
you.
point. We had a surplus. And how does that change 23, 24 at all? So we were saying we're going to run a deficit, but we're pushing a little money over. So then what does 24, 25 look like? And if can we wait or not? Yes, that's my biggest question. Because if we can wait to November 24, that makes the most sense to me. But if we cannot wait, then we can't wait, and we just need to get going then. For public opinion and otherwise.
Will Jordan have some of those projections for us, or Danielle, in terms of what 24, 25 expenses might be projected to be and projected revenues based on the biennium?
We'd have a better picture of what our revenues will be. But expenditures, I won't know. What's our insurance premiums going to go up? What's my electrical bill going to go? Those will be a little bit tougher to come up with in October. Know what next school year's expenses are going to be.
Yeah, but I mean, we could estimate, don't you think? I mean, let's say
We gotta be able to, because if we're going to ask for a recurring referendum, we've got to be able to anticipate what we need for the next 5 years.
We would need to
Right.
provide parameters.
provide parameters.
Yeah, like if we give a 3% pay raise and we estimate everything is going to go up 5%.
For sure. Exactly.
Then we could get those.
Well, I don't know if it's our position to give the parameters. I mean, I would more estimate based on what did our utilities do last year? Did they go up 5% or did they go up 20%? You know, and then a 5% increase is probably not smart. You know, you want to plan on something similar unless there was an extenuating circumstance, you know, but yeah, I mean, we should anticipate what's are we going to pay what for CPI and, you know, scenario 1, 2, and 3. You know, I think that would be a helpful exercise just to, you know, Mitch, knowing that they're estimates, right?
Sure.
I mean, we need to make some kind of attempt to project our expenses out more than 1 year. I mean, I think it's possible.
The difficult part, in my time as an employee in this district, I've seen CPI, obviously 8% last year, and we knew budgetarily we couldn't make 8% work. But I've also had CPI come in at just over 0.1%.
I know, but I mean, we
and our biggest expenses are obviously in salaries and benefits.
Right. I mean, so that's, I mean, we can create an 8% scenario. We can create a 4% scenario. We can create a 1% scenario. And I mean, we knew CPI was going to be close to 8% for at least 6 months. You know, the winds were blowing, you know, we knew it wasn't going to be 0.1%, you know? So I think we can make an educated guess as to where it's going. And, you know, we can create different contingencies. You know, let's say our insurance premiums go up 5% or whatever, you know.
The hardest part would be, okay, looking at, you want plan A, B, and C. The language that goes before the taxpayers has to be set in stone at this date. If you're going in April, it has to be set in stone at least 70 days prior to that. So you can't come back and say, oh, well, CPS now is this, so we're going to do that, you know. So that's where some of the challenges come into play. I think we can certainly look at it and say, okay, based on my staff right now, again, it's what I did last year for you. Based on my staff, not knowing for sure who's retiring, we're bringing everybody back. You have it. That first finance committee meeting, we talked, here's 1%. So you knew what 1% was going to be. So now if it's 4%, it's just 4 times that number or 8 times that number, wherever it came into play. We can do some of those games. I can't get insurance numbers until I get closer to the end of the year because it's kind of based on kind of our claims and our performance as a staff. Are we healthy again this year? That percent of increases could be lower, you know, or it could be double what it was this year based on a really bad, unhealthy year. We can put together some scenarios, but again, you're still looking at language that you need to have decided long before any of the realities come into play.
I think we understand that. But I mean, not only can we project these numbers, I think we are obligated to, in order for us to even know how much money we want to ask for, especially if it's a recurring amount, you know, because if we undercut it and, you know, we're back to referendum in 2 or 3 years, you know, we're going to really regret that. But if we overcut it a little bit and we end up not going to referendum for 7 or 8 years, you know, but so, I mean, I think that we have to create, this is our most likely scenario. This is somewhat likely. This is our least likely scenario. And then, you know, we would entertain recommendations. This is how much money I think we should,
Even if we did,
then we develop the language, you know, based on our best information.
Even if we didn't do that, if we didn't ask for multiple scenarios, we'd still be asking the administration to give a recommendation of what this should be. We would want it to be based on the best understanding of what the next 5 years looks like at a minimum, I would say.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the real challenge with all of this compared to like a business is not, you know, not being able to go back, right? So we gotta look out, you know, in that 3 to 5 year range and not just be thinking about next year, kind of a ticky-tacky, like, well, I know this is going up. It's got to be kind of like more out there and maybe a little bit vague, but
Worst case.
in worst case.
Best case, like, but that's your chessboard. Sorry, you've been trying to.
As we're talking about referendum though, remember that whatever, we do not have to collect everything that is approved. So if we set a 5-year recurring referendum and it turns out that that CPI is very low again, and that we have a fantastic insurance year, and that our utility rates actually went down, we don't have to charge all of that. We just don't flex that power at that point.
As long as we word the referendum that way.
I believe that we set the mill rate annually, and we have a maximum that we can collect, but I don't believe that there's a minimum that we can collect.
I believe that's accurate.
And
Yeah.
and all that's a perfect example of like why the story, and not just a story to make up a story, but why the best case, worst case is like the setting up the strategy for what makes the most sense so that we understand why as a board and the public understands why. And then maybe we don't need to take it all, but like it matters to your point. Like if we cut ourselves short, it's easier to not take the max than to not give yourself the true story of what might need to be happening.
Yeah. Thanks, Jody.
Be a year. Okay, anything else on that? Yeah, there. Agenda here. Mitch, I think that's it for information, right? And then we go to action item. We approve the district seclusion, and restraint report.
Angie Klein to come back out.
So I kind of put the description in there for you, but part of our responsibilities. Thank you. In 2011, the act changed where we have to release our seclusion and restraint report in an open public session. And they have to be broken down by school. And it has to be done by October 1st. So we do it every year at the September meeting. So last year we had 1 seclusion and restraint at the elementary school, 0 at the middle school, 0 at the high school. All staff that are trained, or all staff that are involved on our crisis teams that might potentially respond to a student in distress are trained. Every member of the staff is trained appropriately if they are on that team. So, the numbers keep going down, which is great. That's what I want to see. So
That's the point I was gonna make. And I'll make a motion that we approve exclusion and restraint, but the numbers from where they've been in the past, obviously some of it has to do with the students that are in the building, but I think it also speaks to preventative measures that are maybe taken and how well we're doing with the students that may fall into this report, that our numbers are so low, because there's been, prior years when we used to get this 6-7 years ago where the numbers were staggering at times. So thank you.
Okay.
you beat me to it.
Oh, sorry.
Bush and Skelding. Yeah, I agree. This is very low and should celebrate that. I totally agree with your point. I think the anticipation and the ability to handle these early on are due to some really good training.
Are these unduplicated? Or is that that's the total?
That's the total one.
That is amazing. Good job. I mean, even if it were duplicated, or unduplicated.
Okay, any other comments or questions about the report?
Bush,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Next, we need to approve the state recommended record retention schedule. That's basically for keeping records
Correct.
on file, correct?
I would ask that the board consider tabling this agenda item. I was attending a meeting last Friday. And one of the attorneys for I always say the name wrong, so it'll come to me in a minute. There's a law firm that represents school districts, not Boardman and Clark. I think Jelk is the guy's name, but anyways, he was talking to us. It was a statewide meeting for superintendents. He's like, if your board has not gone through this process yet, he goes, I would suggest that you stop. 2010 is when the state last updated their record retention policy. And if anybody's really interested and wants some light reading, I have printed off the record retention policy plus the crosswalk from their updated version to the last version. But the main point was, what did your district do back in 2010? Did the district adopt the state policies? While it's not crucial, there are things that we have to do, maintain records for 7 years in those scenarios. But I'm asking for time to find out what did our board do back in 2010? Did they just adopt the state's schedule? And if so, then us just readopting the new one is easy enough for us to do. But he's recommended that we find out what the school district had done back then. So I don't know if it was a policy or if it was just guidelines for record retention. So I have to look back. 2010, I don't believe we were using board books, so there may be some digging that goes on. So I would ask that you table this until I can find further information as to what the district has done before proceeding.
That we table this topic.
I'll second.
So I'm still confused as to why it matters whether we adopted the DPI schedule in 2010 or not.
It's what steps we should take next. If we've adopted the states, then simply readopting the newest version is plain and simple. If we've never adopted them, then it's do you wish to adopt them? Do we wish to go with the current plan, whatever our current plan was when the board established it? But again, it comes back to, student records. How long do we retain student records? How long do we retain health records? How long do we retain employee records? There are guidelines in place for a lot of those kinds of things. So it's just a matter of what has the school done? Did we create our own? Did we make up our own based on these, or did we just simply adopt the state records retention schedule?
Okay. So you're in the process of reviewing what the board decided in 2010, comparing it to the current revised schedule from DPI, and make a recommendation as to which we should adopt, or
correct
some third option.
Yeah. So back in 2010, I can find minutes that say the board, the motion was to adopt the state's record retention schedule. It was approved. And that gives me the direction, the guidelines as to how we move forward in our next steps.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about tabling this till the October meeting? Okay.
Reisner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes. Next we'll move to business services. I'll take a motion to approve bills payable and the credit card statement of activity together or separately.
I'll make a motion to approve together.
Second.
Harris Gelding. Okay. Any comments or questions?
When can we start doing a consent agenda for minutes and bills payable and stuff?
How about the October meeting?
Let's do it.
Okay. Easy enough.
Yep.
I do have not a question so much as a comment, is we've got a couple more subscriptions to what I have no doubt are fantastic resources, that Mr. Renwick had. I'm just concerned we've paid for several of these resources and just, Tom, maybe if you could reach out and see what those, what the resources are, there's just different subscriptions we've gotten. There was a couple on this list on his credit card. I'd have to.
I only ask because like Tom and I have spent the last week changing over administrative access on several of them, and
Okay.
so we don't know if they've already been covered or.
Yeah, my comment was just maybe trying to find out what resources he was using, and then since they're paid for, making sure that we continue to use them. So it sounds like we're on top of it already, but like,
Handbook.
yeah, like this one is Plan Book, Learning A to Z, LLC,
Integrity.
Haggerty.
Integrity is a reading.
Integrity is used for pay and one, pay and one, I know that one, plan was used by. I mean, A to Z, I know is being used already still, but we will continue to, as we know them, continue to change our subscriptions over so that.
I mean, it might be as simple as sweeping the credit card payable for the last year and seeing what's on there. I just wanted to make sure we're.
Danielle could likely just search for Matt's name,
Yeah.
everything in the last year, to just take a look at it to see, to make sure they're all resources that we use or want to keep using at that.
So Vicky Yakima also sends out, who's using this current resource, and also sends part of that.
Excellent. Sounds like you're all way ahead of it.
Any other comments or questions about the bills payable? Okay. Angie?
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom.
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Okay, next regular meeting is October 9th. Just a reminder to, fill out our board meeting evaluation tool this week.
The quarter one, which tab was it?
Quarter one, yes. thank
Did you already fill it out?
Did.
Looks like the sunshine fund is getting low. for any people.
Yes.
Oh, I brought money.
And if you can.
That's right. Actually, specifically.
Need a motion to adjourn.
Oh.
Yes, I'll take a motion to adjourn first.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
At 7:32.
All in favor of adjourning? Say
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, meeting
I'm
adjourned.
sorry, I didn't